Captains of Industry, brought to you by Airtel.
He's often celebrated for his role in the reconstruction of Rwanda. Today, he's a leading voice in the lobby for Africa in fora such as the G8 and the G20. Last year, he was re-elected unopposed for a second term at the helm of the African Development Bank Group. He's Dr. Donald Kaberuka, our Captain of Industry. Tonight, Dr. Kaberuka, thanks for staying with us. Now, obviously, before the break, we were talking about some of the challenges in dealing with post-conflict states in Africa. You were quite bullish about Africa, its growth prospects, and the opportunity. How do you work with organizations, for instance, like the African Union or the Economic Commission for Africa? Because there they have to take a political stand, and you were quite adamant that yours is a calculated risk opportunity, value maximization game. You don't want to make political pronouncements, but often you have to.
Because we work in a political environment. We don't have political objectives, but we operate in a political environment. And the seamless cooperation between the African Union, ourselves, and the ECA is absolutely vital. And that's why we have just opened a joint liaison office in Addis Ababa between the three institutions so that we can scale up our cooperation. The AU has done extremely well on issues of conflicts, peace building, and the rest of it. The ECA does a lot of work in terms of institutions, governance, and we're a financing institution. And so I think this triangle fits in very well. We have a lot of ground to cover. Now, when I say we don't do politics, we don't do partisan politics. We know that Africa cannot make progress unless some of the political jigsaws are resolved. But what we will not do is to be party to particular political opinions or to give an impression that we have got political objectives. But we operate in a political context and must be sensitive to that.
Now, I think a lot of people are aware of the fact that you are Rwandese. And a lot of people know of the harrowing genocide in Rwanda and what it took to rebuild that society and that economy. How does that history inform your worldview?
First of all, it is some time since I was in the government of Rwanda. And for the time I was in office, together with my colleagues, a large team, because, you know, in a mammoth task of that nature, you need all the desks on the table. And I think it was a massive collective effort to try and get Rwanda back at work to where it is now. Now, what are the lessons which have inspired me in my current work? I think there are many, but I would like to pick two. It is important to believe that you can prevail. It is quite important. It is even more important to accept that you make mistakes, fall down, and stand up. It is better to learn that way than to believe there's a template somewhere which you can use. Now, in this case, there was a vision for the country's recovery. We needed to translate that vision into particular strategies and policies. But the belief that you can prevail, the passion of what you are doing, I think that is what makes the difference. The rest is technical, is operational. But that intangibles, passion what you are doing, belief that you can win, belief that you can prevail, is true for a company, for a country, or for an international organization.
That sense of victory obviously comes with a bit of hindsight, and I just want to continue on the Rwanda narrative. I mean, we don't know a lot about your childhood, and I don't want to take you to too many places in that respect, but for instance, you were partly raised in a refugee camp, and that must have had some bearing on your consciousness as a child and on the solutions probably that you wanted to offer the world as an adult. As we're dealing with our own sort of healing in many countries in Africa, post whatever trials we've been through, how can we do it, just from your own personal experience?
Well, you're right. Many Rwandans of my generation were raised in exile and refugee camps. In my case, when I was 8 years old. You know, children at that age, they have a certain view of the world. But for me, what influenced me most was two things. First, the way in which African countries who accepted us and who lived in their countries looked after us. It got me to think very much as an African, because I could see that at the end of the day, we are one. Number two, I think it also got me thinking about governance issues, social injustices, and how poor governance can have vast consequences, not simply for the country, but for even the neighborhood. So I think, in a way, the positive thing, I think as an African in my mind, because I left Rwanda at 8 years old. I came back a mature person, almost 40.
Yeah.
And in that period, I lived in the African countries, European countries, but it is Africa which provided us with safety and security. And that is important. It is important for me and for many Rwandans of my generation. But also attention to issues of governance, to issues of justice, of inclusion, have remained very much anchored in my mind.
Well, then you've come full circle from that level of consciousness about inhumanity and injustice and issues of social justice, because there was a time in your life when you were an investment banker, and some would ask, why leave a lucrative career as a banker to come and run a development finance institute?
Well, I told you that about passion. Here's a country after a genocide. It needs all its sons and daughters to rebuild it. It can't be the task for some people, not others. It doesn't matter how much you're earning. That's not the issue. And I'm not alone. Many Rwandans left lucrative jobs. They were doctors, they were surgeons, they were lawyers, and all of us came together to rebuild the country. And for me, I think it was much more exhilarating than perhaps a fat account in Barclays, which I think, of course, is always helpful. But I think it is unhelpful if your country is going under.
Yeah. So what else inspires you?
What inspires me is that not many Africans get the opportunity to do the kind of work I'm doing.
Yeah.
We're a continent of 1 billion people, but how many Africans get the opportunity to lead an institution like this and look at ways of helping Africa move on? It is almost happening for an individual in a century. And I think that I'm aware of that responsibility. I'm aware that many Africans look to people like me to try and help them get over many challenges, including some we've been discussing. I think that responsibility, someone like me has to bear in mind all the time.
You still play squash?
Less than before, but I try to keep fit because that is important for my job as well.
But just to keep fit, or are you very competitive?
No, mainly to keep fit now. I try to be competitive in other things, but mainly now to keep fit.
Okay, you've got 5 years remaining at the AFDB, and we spoke about the fact that there was just a bit of a reconstruction or a restructuring initially, getting everybody, all hands on board, as you were saying earlier on. What are the priorities now?
When I was re-elected in May last year, the shareholders of the bank said to me, what you are doing is right. We don't want new directions. Consolidate what you have done, which is basically financial soundness of the institution, operational efficiency, focus, and partnership with other institutions, and focus on those things which make Africa today what it is, and able to become that additional pole of growth which the world needs in this time. And so we are focusing on the same things: regional integration, the Bank of Africa's integration, issues of infrastructure and energy and climate change, issues of food security, and also getting countries out of conflict back to normalcy and steady state. We'll concentrate on those things, but in between, the financial crisis taught us some lessons. This landscape is not the same when I was elected. And so we have to adjust somehow to this new landscape with many new partners in the world, because now we've got several centers of growth in the world. We have an Africa which is different, both politically and economically. And so we'll be consolidating, but taking into account this new landscape, which has many features which you know quite well.
We're at the end of the program, and I often ask our captains this question. Your personal philosophy, if you could describe your core values or articulate them in one sentence, what would that be?
I don't know if I can do that in one sentence, but I'll go back to what I've told you before. I think that passion in what I'm doing is what guides me. Because if I'm not passionate in what I'm doing, the chances of success are very, very limited. You must decide for yourself at the beginning, is this something I want to do? Am I passionate about it? And then believe you can prevail. You will fail on some things, but you can manage failure, you can manage challenges. But I think for me, passion in what I'm doing is critical.